Hey guys, this is Mr. Lawson, and this is the first video blog for ESL 101. Each week I'm going to review what we talked about during that week in our class, and I'll take any questions that you have over email and try to answer them as well. During this week's class, we had our introductions on Monday, and then on Wednesday we talked about 4 topics. We talked about subject-verb agreement, we talked about paragraph structure, we talked about subordination, and we talked about coordination. I'm going to review each of those 4 things really briefly so you have a chance to come back here and take a look at what those things are in addition to the papers that you have that I gave you in class. Subject-verb agreement is pretty simple. It's something that we've covered in class and you've covered in other classes. Basically, it's making sure that the subject of your sentence matches the verb in your sentence. For example, the sentence, Professor Lawson teaches ESL 101. Professor Lawson, singular noun, teaches singular verb. That's basically what we're talking about with subject-verb agreement. It's pretty easy because everyone pretty much knows how to do that in a small sentence. It gets more difficult when you take the small sentence and make it into a bigger sentence. For example, one of the sentences I gave you in your worksheet was the NBC lineup, which has a lot of new shows, still looks lame. I don't have a TV, so I chose to pick on NBC. NBC is singular, so we have looks as a singular verb, but it's in the sentence they're not next to each other. They're pretty far away from each other. So when those words are pretty far away from each other, that's when we get problems with subject-verb agreement. So that's why we're talking about it. It's a common issue in ESL 101, and I'm pretty sure I'll be circling verbs in your writing, and then I'll be noting that that's a subject-verb agreement issue, and you'll be able to refer to this video, but also the paperwork I gave you in class on Wednesday. I mentioned some words that are pretty special. Words like each, neither, and either. They're usually singular if they're used by themselves. Words like anyone, everyone, everybody, someone, nobody, those are also singular nouns and they require singular verbs, even though words like everyone and everybody seem like we're talking about a lot of people. It's still a singular noun. When we're using words like there and here, for example, there are and here are, those aren't the subjects. The subjects come after the verb are or is, typically, and whether or not that noun is a plural or a singular noun determines the subject-verb agreement. For example, there are 2 classes agrees as opposed to there is 2 classes, which does not agree. That's basically subject-verb agreement, making sure your subject and your verb match. The next thing that we talked about was paragraph structure, and this is pretty important because you're going to be working with paragraphs in the structure of an essay throughout our class together. The typical paragraph starts with a topic sentence. It then includes development sentences, explanations, descriptions, definitions, examples, and it finishes with a concluding sentence. Topic sentence tells the reader what the main idea of the sentence of the paragraph is going to be. It includes the topic, of course. It also includes the perspective. The perspective is basically your opinion of the topic. The development sentences, as I said, they are explanations, details, examples. They support the topic sentence. They explain to the reader why the topic sentence is true. And then a concluding statement is basically restating your topic sentence in different words, restating your main idea from the paragraph in different words. For my class, we're going to follow, I think it's a 9-sentence format. We're going to have our topic sentence, a supporting idea, and then an example, explanation, description, elaboration, then supporting idea number 2, and then an example, explanation, description, elaboration, supporting idea 3, example, explanation, description, elaboration, then a concluding statement, and then a transition. This applies for body paragraphs. Introduction and conclusion paragraphs for an essay are a little different, and we will talk about those as they come. I gave you an example over the weekend of an essay that was a pretty good essay. It was a B+ or an A- in my ESL 101 class last semester. I hope you've taken a look at that. Those body paragraphs are pretty good examples of what I'm looking for with paragraph structure. Excuse me. The next thing that we talked about in class was subordination. Subordination is basically a dependent clause. You have a clause that begins with a subordinating conjunction. Words like because, if, whenever, even though, even if, although, whenever. Words like these. When they're attached to a independent clause, they become a subordinate clause and a dependent clause. For example, I know a lot about English is a complete sentence. But once you say, because I know a lot about English, it's no longer complete, it's dependent, and it's a subordinate clause. The reason why subordination is important is because it helps us take small sentences, combine them with other sentences, and make those sentences bigger. Academic writing, we're taking small pieces and we're making them into larger, more academic, more complex pieces of writing. They're also important because these words, because, if, whenever, are pretty common. We use them in speaking all the time, and we definitely use them in speech all the time, and we need to know how to put them together in writing. The last thing that we talked about in class was coordination, coordinating conjunctions. We remember these words by fanboys. Fanboys, little whirly fans. For, and, nor, which is a rare one. We don't use that often. But, or, yet, and so. Your document that I gave you in class on Wednesday explains, and if you didn't get it on Wednesday, it's on the website, explains what each of those coordinating conjunctions means. For example, the word for, it means to show a cause or a reason. For example, I've applied to Palomar College for I want a good education. That's a reason why you're going to Palomar College. So that document tells you what those words are for. The less common ones like for, nor, yet, and a little bit so, you might want to get familiar with because I'm going to be asking you to use those words, and you're going to be seeing them in quizzes. They're the academic side of the coordinating conjunction, so you're going to be using them. When a coordinating conjunction is between two complete sentences, you use a comma before the coordinating conjunction, which is different from a subordinating conjunction. If a subordinating conjunction is between two sentences, no punctuation. If the subordinating conjunction is at the beginning of two clauses, you put a comma after the first clause. So that's basically what we talked about in class. We talked about subject-verb agreement. We talked about paragraph structure. We talked about subordination, and we talked about coordination. 4 things. Oops, there you go. 4 things. We talked about those in class. I didn't get any questions over email this weekend, so clearly everybody is an expert in these things, which is great because we have a quiz on these 4 things, plus the new things we're learning in class on Monday and that you did for homework, comma splices, run-ons, fragments on Thursday. So thanks for listening. There'll be a blog every Saturday night for you to review what we talked about in class during the week.